For the return system on our setup, I was going to return it through the stock pickup, and for that I cut off the sock for the pickup tube and would run our line straight to that hard line. So to mount the new pump right here, I've got a scrap piece of steel, poke some holes in it, just basically trace it out so it'll fit. Found a bracket that looks like it would go to a roll cage, but we're gonna weld it to that piece of sheet metal right there. So this is me using a flux core welder. This is not what you're supposed to be using, but it's what we got, so we're gonna make it work. Viewer discussion advised. Kevin, if you're watching this, close your eyes. Even though you already saw it. Anyone else that's a welder, don't look. But hey, it works. Let's be honest. Not the prettiest looking thing, but functional. And that's what we're going for at this point. So, enjoy the next, 30 seconds or so of me getting this thing figured out. So here I'm welding that bracket that I just flipped up onto the back of the car. This is not welding it to the bumper, but whatever you want to call that the bumper attaches to. It's a thinner piece of metal than what that bracket is. That bracket that looks like it originally went to, or is intended to weld to a roll bar with. That material is a lot thicker than this, so I had a little bit of a problem trying to weld without blowing holes through the original sheet metal on the car. So definitely had to play around with the settings there, but it is safe. It's just not the prettiest looking thing. It'll hold my body weight. I was hanging on it once I finished it. But if you're also wondering what that piece of metal right there is doing, just leaning against it, that's to just cover the fuel tank right there, because it's right behind that. The fuel tank is empty, but I already put it in, didn't feel like taking it out. And I just wanted to play it safe and just hopefully not have a spark or something ignite any fumes that may be floating in the air in that area. While I was messing with that, Dad was tackling the wiring here. You can see in the back of the car for the taillights. We used a kit from Racewire Solutions, and that kit was fairly worked very well. Unfortunately, the brake lights I ended up wiring separately just because when you press the brake pedal, the whole back of the car lit up, and that was no bueno. So, moving on to the headlights, it's still part of that same kit there. Y'all will plug into essentially what looks like a tractor kind of switch off of the column, but you got the rear headlights, blinkers. Still need to wire the hazards now that I think about it. This is a shifter that we are using from Motion Raceworks for our new Power Glide transmission. And for this shifter, they included these templates so I could drill some holes for these shifter grips, if you want to call it that. And I've got these just because I wanted to have that button you can see by my hand, and to trace a template for drilling some holes in the floor. To mount the shifter, we used some masking tape and poke some holes in there. And here I am, it's a little hard to see here, but I'm trying to drill out the holes for the crash bars inside these doors. If you have ever seen or driven in a second gen Camaro, you know these doors weigh a ton. They just wreak havoc on what you call it? The door jambs there, or not door jambs, sorry. Door hinges. The door hinges will eventually start sagging down just because the doors weigh so much. So I wanted to try and pull some weight out of these doors just because you got the whole roll cage put in there. So that's over 100 pounds at least. So try and pull some weight out of the car just by taking some weight out of the doors there. So you're going to drill about, I want to say, it was 4 holes on each side of the door, and you could see these spot welds. They are very hard to see on some parts of the door, so make sure you take your time. I'm using regular drill bits, but then I ended up switching to a step bit. their step drill bit, and I just got cheapies from Harbor Freight, and they, oh my word, they sped up the process so much. So I wish I just would have started off with those, because I used that on the door on the driver's side, and that sped up probably by 50%. So learn from my mistakes. That's the whole point of these videos, or part of the point. So we could go through this together, because there's no how-to videos on how to drill these doors, drill the spot welds out of these crash bars on these second-gen Camaro doors. Here we are cutting a little window for those crash bars to slide out of, and this was honestly a pain in the butt. So right now we are using a Sawzall with a metal blade, but as you can see, that just did not want to cooperate. As you can imagine, we even tried using a jigsaw, and that worked a little better, but just beware, you're gonna bend a lot of blades, and even if you bend them back, it's gonna bend them. It's a pain in the butt. We also used a cutoff wheel, but that you have to be a little careful with, just because it's gonna want to grip, and then you don't want to cut too far into the door using that. And even with these, you want to be careful. Just with the length of the blade, you don't want to cut too far in and start cutting the actual door skin there. So just beware, take your time, and be just very careful while you're cutting these bars out. So using the cutoff wheel, like I mentioned earlier, we're trying to cut some slots to pull this door bar out by. So this window that we're creating, that rectangle essentially, the crash bar is welded to that. So we're trying to cut that out so we could pull the whole thing out as a chunk. But the part I didn't record and forgot to, sorry about that, in the middle there, you're gonna have to have your door panel off, obviously, on the inside. And there is a metal, or it's almost like a piece of sheet metal. It's a little hard to describe, but it's a little thicker than sheet metal. But it is attached or spot welded to the middle of the crash bar. So when you are pulling these out, keep that in mind. You're going to have to pry, or what I ended up doing is I stuck a pry bar and tried to hammer against that pry bar against those spot weld spots, and tried to break those loose so I could detach that metal support from the middle of that crash bar, so I could free it completely and pull that out from that window that we were trying to create over here. And sorry you can't see anything, this is just Dad's app. This is the new small block Chevy 383 that we'll be putting in the car, fully built for this application. This is the Power Glide transmission we got through a friend. This is a really cool deal. This is actually a giveaway torque converter that I got from Stephen Little. He owns a Kraken Camaro. That's a small tire, no prep car. This is from Freak Show Performance, so thanks again for that. This is our turbo kit. It's from CX Racing. It is the whole hot side that is supposed to bolt right into the second-gen Camaro. So here I wanted to give a special thanks to Chris over at 660 Raceworks for totally taking care of me here. I needed some welding done to shorten this pipe for the turbo kit to bring the turbo in a little closer. And being stainless steel, you really don't want to use my little flux welder there, or flux core welder. So he did a beautiful job doing this for me. I wanted it done right, and he was the man for the job. So thank you once again. And he also welded a couple flanges for me later on. But this is what the turbo kit looks like on the engine. So very happy with how it fits. I was really nervous about how the turbo kit was going to fit around those roll cage bay bars, but for the most part it all fit pretty well. This kit was not designed for those bars in the engine bay, so to go right on that worked out as well as I could have ever imagined, to be honest. So here I am welding that stainless that I was just telling you I didn't want welded, using the flux core welder here. But since this is not supporting the weight of the turbo, I felt comfortable that I could do this myself and it would still support the weight, no issue. It just wouldn't be the most prettiest weld, but functional. And if it gets us on the road quicker, that's all what I'm all about. And I don't want to be bugging Chris way too much with every single little weld I add here, there, everywhere, because he does live about 40 minutes away. But he did make some accommodations for me, and once again, thank you so much for doing that. But here, Flux welder or Flux core welder worked out fine. Still seals well. It's holding the weight of that exhaust pipe there coming out of the turbo. I am welding a bullet muffler to it, and I ended up having an additional muffler that Shane brought over, and thanks again for that. Just to help quiet down the car, just because it was very loud with just a bullet muffler on it. I thought it'd be a little quieter with the exhaust going through the turbo and a single 3-inch exhaust pipe, but it was still very loud, and I'm not sure the neighbors are pissed, but tough. This is the end product of using a flex core welder on stainless steel to mild steel, which is a big no-no, but like I said, it works, just not the prettiest looking thing. Looks like Ray Charles welded it with his feet, but hey, it works, so we're just gonna roll with it. You aren't gonna see it anyways unless you're watching this video. And if you are, sorry you had to see that. Here I am pulling apart old AN fittings off of the previous fuel lines we had on the car. Previously we had 8AN fuel line, and part of it could handle the ethanol fuels like E85. Part of it was just meant for regular 87 or 93 octane fuel, so it couldn't really handle the alcohol kind of type fuel. So I wanted to go with all new fuel line. The setup what we got is 10AN feed line from the pump to the regulator, and from the regulator we are using 8AN fuel line to go to the carburetor, and our return line will be 8AN, and that 8AN line will go all the way back to the very start of this video where I showed you the pump, or what would be the stock tank pickup tube, but what we ended up doing was cutting that stock off, and we are running our return line straight through that same pickup tube. It's just dumping the old fuel back into the top of the tank there. This is actually brand new JX fuel line. It is their Extreme Flow, along with their compatible JX fittings that are meant for fuels like E85. And we're running a 10AN, like I said, from the fuel pump to the front of the car. This is a fuel cutoff switch, always handy when you are disconnecting fuel lines. You're not going to have a constant drip or fuel going everywhere. Just shut that valve off. This is the pre-filter we are running before the air motor pump right there. Just don't want to take any chances really, and we're going to create a little chunk of line, probably a 90 degree or 45 degree fitting straight to that inlet for the sump. The sump is an 8AN male fitting, so I had to do an adapter for a 8AN female to a 10AN male to go to that line. Top side, a little bit of a hassle. I gotta run to the hardware store, grab some new bolts, because that's a different thread. Like, I think it's metric. I don't know. I have to look it up, but none of my bolts are fitting it. So once I get those fittings, I think I'm gonna run it to the fuel block-off plate. That blue plate, take that out, even though it's already in there, pain in the butt, but whatever. Pull that out, drill a hole, put a 10AN bung in it, and run the oil drain. It's on the other side of this thingy. This into that, because you want a straight down, or as much of a straight down hose as you could get, because it's gravity to help drain. Our fuel regulator is going to be mounted there. Dad put a little whoop-de-doo there. try and clear that arm on the carburetor. Then painted it after he heated it. Yeah, run the lines up to the regulator. 8 AN fittings on the carburetor. I ordered some 8 AN to 10 AN once again, because I think we're gonna do kind of what Street Racing Channel did and run the lines like a whoop-de-doo here and vice versa, whoop-de-doo. So big circle, try not, or we'll be mindful of this. So we'll see how that turns out, because I want it to get too close to the header and hopefully squeeze it through this hole, give or take. See if we can't kick that out over there a little bit more to give ourselves some more clearance. Amazon has these fittings. I wanted ones like the one Motion had, but didn't want to pay for Motion, so next best thing, China. I'll run this to breather. I think we're gonna put it back here once we get the distributor in and see what we got for clearance, and flip this around so it's shorter hoses like the backside is, and run that to the breather. Not too fond on the whole cold side, but making do with what we got with off-the-shelf parts. I didn't want to do any welding really, because it's kind of hard to bring the car over to someone right now to have a whole kit made, and we just don't have the time. You may be asking why we're not doing an oil drain to the oil pan like normal people would do. Well, that was my intention, but when you say right side of the motor, they thought it's over here, the engine shop that I had build this thing. So they put it way on the left side, right over here. I don't want to run a line way over there to way over there. Over there. Over there. There we go. So that's why we're going to run it to the fuel cutoff blade, so it's a shorter travel for the oil to go to and straight back to the pan. And another little pet peeve, yeah, that's not ideal, but the clearance, the Allen head bolts right there, and then even the clearance, this piece, whatever you want to call it, the attachable flip thingy, had to clearance the bracket for the throttle cable right there. Distributor's not in yet because we don't have a timing marker. What engine shop doesn't put a timing marker in when they put it together? I don't know. So we ordered one for 8-inch balancer because that's what we got. Goal is to have this thing ready in less than 2 weeks. Not sure if it's gonna happen, but that's why Cole decides hanging like that, because we just don't have the time to try and sneak it through there. This kit's originally designed, if you clock the turbo this way, it goes through the radiator support into an intercooler, but we're not gonna run one because blow through life. I know some of you are gonna hate that, but whatever. Tough. Yeah. I don't even think the exhaust was clearance the hood either. It'd be really close and probably melt it. So yeah, just not gonna run a hood momentarily until it's only gonna be running for a few days this year just for the race and a couple little outings, but probably bring this to the shop later to have this pipe tweaked so it's closer to here. And I know Kevin hates this angle, but like I said, not really designed to use with these bay bars. It's a miracle it even fits the way it does with very little modifications. I had 660 raceworks. He re-welded this part, cut this. It was originally up to here, cut it up to here, welded the VS Racing flange to it, and he also welded the flange to this because that's not the one that came on the CX Racing kit. So that is very cool of him to fit us in. Totally last minute like that. Thank you once again. So a little hard to see, but Dad was able to drill a hole in our block-off plate right there and put one of those bulkhead fittings. That's what I meant to say earlier, but 10 AN bulkhead fitting into the fuel block-off plate. That is our oil drain from the turbo, also 10 AN up here. It'll go straight down into there. Might wrap this a little bit just so that doesn't rub a hole in that line. A little bit of a funky fit there because trying to avoid the down pipe for the wastegate. I don't want that getting too hot. melting this as well. Slowly coming along, and then turbo oil feed, I'm thinking probably maybe not. So if we can make this say where it's not going to flex, because this isn't going to have a hood on it, I don't want that getting close and touching this and melting that line. So maybe just temporarily zip tie it to the charge tube, then run it along the, that's going to be back there as like the breather line, but unless we do keep it there, that could be an option. And the regulator will be up there, so maybe zip tie it to that somehow. And then that'll run to a T that I got ordered, where we're gonna run our oil pressure and oil feed off of that. Not brass fitting, but something else is gonna go there. Dad absolutely knocked it out of the park with these fuel lines. Like I said, we used brand new fuel lines, but reused a lot of the fittings as far as the 80N line goes. So this is 80N coming out of the fuel pressure regulator right there. I'm also going to run an electric fuel pressure sensor, so I could have a gauge inside the car, and that's our Motion Raceworks breather. But like I said, trying to do things cheap, so I used leftover line, or Dad used leftover line that we had, JAGS line to run to the valve covers there. And this isn't the most ideal thing. I was going to drill and tap the turbo right there so we could get a fitting drill there to go straight to the wastegate. And Shane recommended using a stainless steel braided line. So that's what we ended up doing. This is just a little rant, but as you can see, it puked its guts right as I was filling the radiator. And you might be asking where it came out of. It came out of the driver's side cylinder head. There is a plug that was non-existent in the cylinder head. Even the engine shop put one on the passenger side head, they didn't put one on the driver's side there. This is our new HVC2 coil, and that's that T I was talking about. That is going to be the oil feed line supply along with the oil pressure supply. And this is what I ended up using. Put it into the side of the cylinder head, put some thread tape on it, plugged up that hole to stop that leak. This is a thing of not beauty, but it is functional. Whatever. It works. Using Amazon parts because next day shipping. I wanted 3 different outlets to come out of that one outlet right there in the back of the intake manifold because the carburetor doesn't have a vacuum port.
Too terrible on.
Here you can see the notorious, every single time we do a new start with a new motor or small block Chevy, it is always 180 degrees off for whatever reason. But whenever that happens, usually backfires or spits out of the carburetor, as you can see here.
You want to retard it?
Yeah, retard it. When you're farther advanced, it's hard for it to take off. Which way?
Right. Just barely.
I got it. Need that paint marker. Do that.
Your other right.
Yep, there you go. You listen to here? You got it. I can take it down then.
Huh? No, let's leave it.
I can't hear anything in here. So playing this back, you could hear what almost sounds like a rod knock, but we were thinking, or Dad was thinking, it might be a loose rocker arm or lifter. So we took the valve cover off just to make sure all the rocker arms were tight, and I didn't see a single thing that's wrong. They all seemed tight. Nothing seemed way too far out of adjustment. So a little bit of a puzzle there. We thought the engine, or the noise was coming out of the driver's side. Here we are going to insert the whole Slink family. Kevin was helping us work on the car for pretty much the whole day, if I remember it, or ever since lunchtime. But Mr. Slink, Mrs. Slink, and the sister came by to help us, or supervise. And I can't remember if it was actually Mr. Slink or Dad who actually found the cause of that death rattle, or what sounded like a death rattle. And the actual cause was the pipe coming out of the turbo, the exhaust pipe. It was rattling against the roll cage bar that is on the passenger side there. After that, we ended up doing a test drive over to our local D&W Cruisin' and did a quick little pull, but had Dad record this in the passenger seat, so I was not watching the gauge on the AFR read 1 point something on the Lambda scale. That is a no-no, and that is because the secondaries on the car were not working at all. So we were only running on 2 barrels that whole time. Here's a nice little idle video. So I'm editing this video at like 12 o'clock, past 12, I don't know what time it is, Wednesday night, and 2 more days on Friday's tech. On Saturday, this Saturday, August 8th or 9th, I haven't seen the calendar in a hot minute, we will be racing at Roadkill Nights. Fingers crossed the rain holds off. But we will be racing Sydney right down Woodward Avenue in Pontiac, Michigan. We've done this race before once with a naturally aspirated 383 blueprint crate engine. And this is going to be our first time with a turbocharger, along with a power glide and a whole other bunch of changes. So very excited about it. Very nervous at the same time. This is going to be our first time actually racing the car, and it's going to be in front of 40 to 50,000 people. So if you guys have a free weekend, I definitely recommend going to check it out. It is definitely quite the environment. Dodge is sponsoring this whole deal, and they have thrill rides and whatever brand new 700 plus daily driver vehicle, whether it's a trucks or the Challengers or Chargers. They do drift contests and off-road courses, literally right there on M1 Concourse, which is right next to where we'll be racing. So definitely recommend you guys coming out to join if you have a free weekend. But if not, I'll let you know how it goes. I'll try and record the best we can. Dad's gonna be recording the passes, so we'll see if he remembers how to press the on button. And we will also do our best to cover the overall layout of the car. And actually I can do that right now. So it is a small block Chevy 383. The engine is about 2.5 or sorry, the engine is about 10.2 to 1 compression. It has got a blower camshaft, a Howard's blower camshaft, and I believe the lift on it was 570, 560. And this is a engine or short block I got off of Marketplace, but ended up having to switch pistons out for other forged pistons because the compression ratio was going to be too high. The compression ratio was too high because the heads I got were not 64cc heads like I thought they were when I bought them off Marketplace. But they were cheap, so I ended up still using them. These heads were actually 59cc heads, so that's going to bring our compression up to 12 point something, and that's going to be way too high for a boosted application. So we switched out the pistons for dish pistons to lower our compression ratio. And where was I going with that? The block. It is a stock block. I did not go with a aftermarket block because I thought I was going to save some money. Honestly, if I had to do it again, I would just get a dart block, or heck, even a blueprint crate engine or blueprint engine block. They make reproduction blocks, but it's basically like your dart SHP block. Basically the same thing. I think it's just slightly cheaper even. But if you do the route that I did, so what I did was I had the machine shop, they took my stock block, bored it 30 over. So it is a true 383 with a stroker crank, 6-inch rod. The rods are I-beam Eagle rods. It's an Eagle forged crank and Icon forged pistons. But the block itself is half filled. And I did that because I still wanted to have coolant running through the block. So far, just driving it around, and I've driven it probably a couple hours around Holland, it has barely gone over 160 as far as temperature wise. And it'll only get to 170 after you get on it like 3 times in a row. Not that I did that. But it's staying fairly cool, and that's not even with a oil cooler on it yet. So once I get that put on it, I'm sure it'll bring the temperatures down even lower. I noticed that with the last setup I had, the oil cooler on, that it would also increase the oil pressure as well. They had to switch out the oil pump for some reason than the one that I supplied them with, but now it is a high volume standard pressure pump instead of the high pressure standard volume, which I would have preferred, but whatever. The block itself, sorry, total squirrel moment. The block itself is a half-filled block. It's also got billet main caps. In order to run those billet main caps, you have to have the line hone done as well. So after you get the parts and labor to half-fill the block, line hone, billet main caps, you're basically in the same amount as you would be if you got a aftermarket block. So if I had to do it all over again, I would do the aftermarket block because that will be stronger, or should be stronger than this stock block with the upgrades done to it. So keep that in mind. The Holland shop that I did it at is supposed to be cheap. They raised their prices definitely since the last time I went through them, so a little salty about that, not gonna lie. But that's the block itself. The transmission, got it through a friend, and that transmission has a standard trans brake on it. It's sorry, I might be saying this wrong. It's not a pro brake, but it's whatever one that you don't have to press the trans brake button while you're in reverse, so whatever you want to call that. So trans brake, manual valve body. It's got brand new, or basically brand new clutches in it. I did have a friend, I'm sorry I'm blanking on his name. He has a red Corvette, the year with the humps on it. Really cool looking Corvette. He races out of Martin and Stanton, I want to say, but at least Martin for sure. He rebuilt the transmission, or went through it just to make sure it's all good, and he also installed a straight cut gear set from BTE. I want to say it's a 180 or 182 gear set. So that is very cool of him. He did that about a year ago, year or two. I can't remember how I've had that transmission. And also installed a deep pan, servo cover, and something else. I'm drawing a blank on what the third part was. I had him installing it. But yeah, transmission's all set to go. The torque converters, that's one of my biggest questions. And sorry, not to ramble on, but the torque converter is a 3500 stall. This is a giveaway torque converter from Stephen Little. He owns the Kraken purple Camaro. It is a small tire, no prep car. Really cool guy. Seems like on the when you watch him on YouTube and even talking to him, he's such a nice guy. But he had this deal with Freak Show Performance torque converter, or I think that was the name of the company. They're out of Texas anyways. But they originally built this torque converter for I want to say it's going to be a 421 was my original idea to do with this car. 421 small box Chevy. So this torque converter is not spec'd out for this engine. So keep that in mind this next weekend. If anything happens and it seems like it's blowing through the converter or it's too tight, this torque converter was not meant for this application. We're using it because we got it and it was free. So we're all about free. Fresh out of college, so you're not gonna have a whole lot of money. And as you can see, this car hasn't ran since 2023 when I last blew it up. So it's taken 3 years to finally get it back on the road. And that's 3 years of slowly building up or saving up and getting parts here, there. Any Motion Racers part was bought on a Black Friday sale or whatever sale they had going on. So it's definitely taken a hot minute. But yeah, anyways, racing this weekend. Be there if you can. If not, I'll let you know how it goes. Thanks for watching, guys, and we'll see you later.